Hello, friends and beautiful people. It is Kathryn conscious creatrix, 5D visionary, and elevated consciousness coach. Hello. It is about to storm really bad here, so the light is going to change and be weird for a bit because I'm in front of my window watching the storm come in, watching the storm come in from the south. And you may hear wind blowing and things hitting my window as I'm speaking, but that's okay. I'm actually really looking forward to the cleansing aspect of having a good old rainstorm. Hello, if you're here, say hi. Today I want to talk about culminating timelines and lifetimes and compressing them and what that means, why this is happening now, why it's so important right now, and what we can do to move this process along so that we can be reaching our highest and best timeline. So, what is culminating timelines? What are culminating timelines, and what does that mean? So, we are coming to a really pivotal point in our human awakening process. There are many of us on the planet who feel that they are cycling through emotions very quickly. Events and experiences that trigger certain emotions that maybe have been the driving force of your life for this lifetime and probably many other lifetimes, let's be honest. And we feel like we're cycling through these experiences very quickly. And in fact, it may feel as though time is speeding up. That is a measure of perception, but it's also a measure of how willing you are to move through these invitations, and they, yes, are invitations from the universe to move through, cycle through emotions, events, experiences that still kind of re-trigger our trauma, that original trauma timeline, whenever that happened, to re-experience that over and over again. It depends on how willing and how much we are participating in consciously moving through this timeline, or it can feel like time is slowing down if we are resisting this process. If we feel like we're still white-knuckling all of this stuff that we feel we have to hold on to, because let's face it, sometimes if we lose all of that, we go into a spiritual, physical, mental, emotional crisis and tailspin, and we're like, well, then who am I? Without all my stuff, who am I, right? And that's just a normal process of this reconciling that we're experiencing with an old way of being so that we can usher in the new. Depending on how much you are participating in this process, it can feel like you're cycling through this stuff really quickly. And many of you are like, well, Kathryn, when is this going to end? Because I've been going through this for the last 6 months, 8 months, 3 years, and it just feels like more and more is coming. Because you're not just reconciling with events, experiences, trauma from this lifetime, but what may be the thing that you're cycling through is everything in this lifetime that you're working on is an echo of lifetimes before, where maybe it goes back all the way through different lifetimes timelines. By the way, they all exist simultaneously. Sorry to screw you over with that confusing remark. But there is no past, present, or future. Everything is existing in the now. So what we're doing is going through, sifting through all of this stuff that gets us to that original, let's just say, trauma timeline, the trauma origin timeline, I call it, where something happened. Maybe we drowned in a past life, or we were persecuted for something in a past life, or belief, for speaking the truth of something at the time, speaking out against something, some wrongdoing. And maybe we go through lifetimes of being a whistleblower, okay? Maybe we go through lifetimes of feeling an incredible fear of water because of how we drowned in a past lifetime. It can resonate, it can echo through many lifetimes if we don't collapse that original timeline. So getting back, I'm circling back around to culminating timelines. So the idea of a culminating timeline is that we are coming to this place of reckoning as a human species, this place of awakening, where we have pretty much lived through as many 3D lifetimes and timelines that we need to mark whatever karmic lesson, contract, agreement, oath, vow that we took, and mark it complete and be done with it. Download the lesson, keep the lesson so we don't have to repeat it, mark it complete so we don't have to repeat that again, so we don't have to hit the reset button on the same trauma timeline over and over and over again. So the culminating refers to all of these timelines kind of compressing in this lifetime. So think about that for a second. If you have all these traumas, and we're not talking about just one trauma. You could have drowned in one lifetime. You could have been, a rich dictator in another lifetime where you persecuted your people and tortured your people. You could have been part of a system of fealty where you lived in a feudal system or something like that, where you were an indentured servant, and so you've lived lifetimes of poverty over and over and over again. So you can have different kinds of trauma, different levels of trauma. So think about that. If we are in a culminating lifetime and timeline right now, in the life that you are in, the incarnation that you are in right now, and you are experiencing a compressing of all the lifetimes, timelines that you have experienced before, that were basically repeating you through a cycle of experiences based on that original trauma timeline, that origin trauma timeline is what I call it. And when I do sessions with clients, we go back to that origin trauma timeline and we collapse it, okay? So that's one less thing for you to work on in this lifetime. And we can do a series of them, but usually there is one that is like the big driving force in your life. And when we collapse that, you're no longer doomed to repeat it. So what's happening is all of these lifetimes, timelines where the origin trauma of one thing existed, of the other thing that existed, of the other things that existed, and there are multiple timelines and lifetimes of experiencing that same thing over and over again. If that's all compressing in this timeline, no wonder it feels like a lot, right? And I know some of you joined late, so I do invite you to watch the beginning because I'm building on this conversation here. So that's a lot. That's a lot to clear. That's a lot to reconcile with. So that is what's happening, this kind of compression. I'm going to put that down. Sorry, I'm messing with the light in here because I have a storm coming through. I have a storm coming through, and so I'm facing where the storm is coming in from the south, and so the light keeps changing, and it's weird. Sorry. I apologize. Try to focus on what I'm saying instead. So if we are going through this experience of compressing all of these timelines of our past, it can feel like a lot in this lifetime. And it can feel like, but I just went through that. I just cycled through that. I just cleared, released, got rid of that in my energy. I just had an energy healer help me with that. There are layers of it. So unless you go back and collapse that original trauma timeline, you're going to keep repeating it, or you're going to keep repeating things that maybe are auxiliary to that. They're not part of the origin trauma. Maybe that did collapse. But there's other things that happen in other lifetimes that are having you push the repeat button on certain traumas, events, and experiences. A looped cycle of experiences that just seems like, I have deja vu, which brings me to the next topic. So I saw it all over social media today, and I interacted with a few posts that were talking about deja vu. I even had one of my clients reach out to me about some crazy deja vu that she had with me, which is very interesting, that maybe I did some healing work with her in a past lifetime. And one of our sessions that we had recently, she kind of kept that to herself, which I don't know why, because if there's anybody who can understand what she's talking about, it would be me. Like, I get it. I don't think you're weird. So that was interesting that she had this deja vu of me being with her as a healer and a mentor priestess or something in a past life. So that was really interesting. But a lot of us are experiencing deja vu. And so I want to explain deja vu a little bit, because I think that more and more we're going to have these experiences. And yes, it's like If you've ever seen that movie, The Matrix, they talk about, the blips in the Matrix, and that's why, a lot of people can experience deja vu. Well, that's just kind of a symptom. It's not the cause necessarily, but we could experience it as that, like a blip in our matrix. We all hold our inner and outer vortex, and it merges and overlaps with everyone else's vortex and the vortex of the one matrix, the one grid, the one collective consciousness. A lot of overlapping involved because there's no separation. We're all part of, you could think of it as a giant tapestry where you are just one thread in the consciousness of that entire one tapestry, the one all. So we're all weaving in and out of each other's experiences all the time. So when we have deja vu, what's really going on is that if you can understand that there is no past, present, or future, everything is existing simultaneously. So when we talk about higher timelines, lower timelines, it's really just a way of kind of giving us some perspective with our limited 3D level of engagement with our mind and what it can wrap its head around when we talk about timelines, because we understand everything is linear. But that's just how we understand things in 3D because of our spatial relationship and how we create value with things here based on time and space in 3D reality. But outside of 3D, 4D, 5D, and beyond, there's no linear time. Everything doesn't exist on a continuum. It's existing simultaneously because everything is part of the now. So past, present, and future is really just a construct for us to give value or break down things so that we can create a story, because everything about being human is creating a story. And when we create a story, we have a timeline, don't we? When I was young, 2 days ago, this is what I'm going to do next week. Everything and how we relate is having to do with space and time. But in truth, everything is existing simultaneously. So when we talk about parallel lifetimes, parallel timelines, alternate timelines, jumping timelines, bending timelines, we are just talking about shifting our perspective from where we are in the now to a different perspective in the now. That's all it is. And the way we do that is dependent upon frequency and vibration, because everything is frequency and vibration. So we think we're in a certain timeline because, okay, I'm touching myself, here I am, and I can see that I'm in this room, sitting at this desk and sitting on this chair. We have a relationship in space and time to where we are. I'm talking to you, I'm sharing something that's continuing on a timeline. But none of this is real. I'm really going to blow your minds here. It's just where we are deciding to put our focus and attention in the moment. And if you decide to shift where you are putting your attention and focus in the moment, you will have a completely different experience. You can have a completely different level of vibration, which creates a different relationship with your now. Okay? So when we are talking about deja vu, what we are doing is making a choice that is different. Let's just say we are in a culmination timeline. Okay, so if you watch from the beginning, you'll know what I'm talking about. We have all of our lifetimes here in 3D compressing and culminating to a level of experience where we get to basically say yes to some things and no to certain others, and create a timeline for ourselves going further that's more self-affirming, where we can, let's just say live with more joy, more abundance, more prosperity, whatever that is. If you're making a choice right now in the moment, based on where you're putting your focus and attention, you are always making a choice. Always and ever you are making a choice. So deciding to keep on that trajectory of choices, that's, let's just say, at a certain vibration. Let's just say in a past life, one of the past lives that's culminating in your now timeline, you made different decisions, which kept you reliving the trauma, okay? So let's just say you're making different decisions, different choices in this lifetime, although you have the same kind of vibration presenting itself to you where you could choose to relive the trauma again. But instead, you're looking at that vibration, you're being present with it, that frequency, and you're saying, you know what? I'm going to make a different choice. I'm deciding to do something different. So here you have the same set of experiences, the exact same scenario, the exact same, let's just say, vibrational wavelength and setup. But you make a choice that allows you to veer off from the timeline that you've been on, maybe through many, many lifetimes, even though we experience them as, past lifetimes. If there is no past, then it's all of these concurrent parallel realities, parallel lifetimes that are existing simultaneously. If you make a different choice in the now, that collapses all those different timelines that allowed you to keep holding that trauma, keep repeating that trauma over and over again. Are you guys following me at all? I hope so. It's really tough to talk about this stuff because it's so conceptual and it's not intellectual or rational at all. So the intellectual mind wants to get it and categorize it and catalog it in a certain way that it's just not going to happen. So you kind of have to get it from here. So you kind of have to go into your heart to get this a little bit more. So once you decide to make that choice and you have that decision-making process that allows you to depart from all those other culminating timelines that lead up to what you experience as now, all of those collapse. And that's why it feels like a blip. Because what it does, like a blip in the matrix, like deja vu, because what it does is in that collapsing of all those other timelines, it creates a ripple. Do you ever read that book, A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline Y'Engle? Well, I think about that book a lot when I talk about timelines. And if you've never read it, or you read it a really long time ago when you were in elementary school, you may want to go back and read it because it's fascinating and it has a lot to do with where we're at in our human awakening process. But anyway, I digress. So what it does is creates a ripple, it creates a wrinkle in time. So it kind of allows us to go into this review mode, okay, where we kind of flash back. We'll experience it as like the best way to describe it, former acid user here, is a flashback. So it's like going back to that time and reviewing it and saying, it's different now. And it's that momentary deja vu review that changes everything going forward, or what we experience as going forward, and accessing what we experience as a higher timeline. So it feels like a blip in the matrix. It feels like, it's like a little bump. It's like hitting a little bump in the road. It's like it creates a ripple throughout time. Now, this is where it's really going to screw you up. It changes your timeline. You're not interfering with anyone else's free will by doing this. You are not messing with anyone or tampering with anyone else's timeline when you do this. Because everything down here in 3D reality is based on free will choice. Free will choice, okay? So because you are changing your timeline and you are compressing, the more and more you keep choosing that better way that I talked about, that example that I used before. Hi, Heather. I'm glad you're here. You're going to want to watch from the beginning, though, when you get the replay. When you are making those choices that I talked about in that example just a moment ago, where you are veering from that original path, where you are literally going back to that origin trauma timeline, and you collapse everything from that trauma timeline on just by making a different choice now, and you keep making better and higher choices for yourself, what you are doing is compressing all the other timelines that could exist where you make those other choices that are not self-affirming, that are in fact self-negating and self-limiting. But you can open up any other timeline at any other time, for any number of reasons, if that is your free will choice to do so. So I've heard other healers talk about, once you compress a timeline, or I should say collapse a timeline, excuse me. Once you collapse a timeline, that's it. You can't ever recreate it. You're wrong. That's incorrect. You can. Because if your free will choice allows you to go back to the trauma, or you decide that, I liked that me. That trauma was my security blanket. I don't know who I am without that trauma, without that pain, without that echo of shock, or disaster in my life. Who the hell am I? I'm going to choose this self-negating thing again. Then it's like opening up that old timeline. But what you're doing is just going into a vibration and opening up another expression of that original trauma timeline. You can't repeat the original trauma, but you can change it by what you're choosing now, if that makes any kind of sense. Like I said, this stuff is confusing. So, and I encourage those of you who are here live, if you want to ask questions, please feel free to ask me questions, because then it helps me kind of focus and direct my attention intuitively to where you're at for how you're asking that question, and I can give you something that's a little more concise and concrete that makes sense for you. That's why I love doing live hot seat coaching. So hopefully, if you listen to this again, this will make some more sense to you. Again, try to redirect your energy so you're listening from here. Like, keep taking your energy into the heart and then grounding what you're hearing and taking it down through the body. Because if all of your energy is up here trying to listen to this and disseminate this information with just pure mental energy, you're not going to get it. You're going to be really confused. It's not going to make any sense. So why is this so important right now? So this is a wrap-up year for many of us. And those of you who I kind of singled out at the beginning of this call, talking about how it feels like everything is just converging at once. All of these different events and experiences that make me feel limited or make me feel like I'm never going to get through this, or, when is this purging going to finish? When am I going to be done releasing? Those of you who are asking those questions and finding yourself in that sweet spot, yes, it is a sweet spot, listen up, because this next bit of information is for you. This is a wrap-up year for you, because that means that you are in a culminating timeline in your life, okay? That means that here we are, as of this date, there is a new moon in Libra. And what this new moon in Libra is doing, and it doesn't have to do with just the new moon exactly, but the comet Chiron, which is really like shoving our shadow aspect of self, our wounded healer aspect of self, into the light for full examination. And we get to see in complete detail, stark contrast, full relief, the stuff that we are holding on to. When our wounded healer is illuminated this much, and I know it's the time of the dark moon because it's the new moon, but everything is a paradox right now. So don't try to break it down too much like that and be too literal about it. The thanks to the comet Chiron, this energy is shoving our wounded healer aspect into the light so we can fully examine and see exactly what we're holding on to, what we're pretending not to know about ourselves. And a lot of us are pretending not to know certain things that we know on a deep level. It's very disconcerting for our energy going forward. It's not in alignment with the path that we want to create for ourselves going forward. Yet we somehow think this is just going to clear up on its own. That, enough of this ascension energy will come in and clean you out and give you a clean slate. Well, I have news for you who are my beloved friends here who are pretending not to know you have stuff to clear. The ascension process is not a passive one. It is an interactive and participatory process, meaning you don't just wake up one day and you're like, oh, cool, I'm in 5D. It doesn't work that way. It is a completely integrative process that is extremely reliant upon your active participation. You have to be active in seeing, having the awareness of knowing what needs to be cleared, of knowing what you want to create, of knowing what you want to, create as a pathway for yourself going forward. Know where you want to go. This is all requiring your active participation. So the more you are just hoping and coping with what's going on and saying, you know what, I'm doing enough meditation and tuning up, into enough solfeggio frequencies and feeling good at 528 hertz when I listen to that meditation. I'm okay, I'm fine. No, that's extremely passive. Go ahead and listen to that frequency while you're doing deep purging, shadow work, energy work that lifts and releases that energy of self-negation. But don't just rely on these passive processes. Just showing up for energy activations all the time and not doing anything in your everyday life to anchor these behaviors going forward that are more self-affirming. This is what is required of us, okay? But the good news is that you're in this wrap-up timeline right now. If this is you, if you feel like all this stuff just keeps coming in waves after waves after waves after waves, and it feels like you're never done, it's because you're in a wrap-up timeline. It's because there's something you don't want to see, that you're not creating awareness of, that you're not focusing your attention on and saying, you know what, enough is enough, it's time for this to go. So the work that I do and the work that I'm going to be doing, because I'm reopening up my Facebook group for the Become the Creatrix self-study program, I'm going to be doing 8 weeks of live hot seat style coaching where you can ask me absolutely anything in this group. It is not a free group, it is a paid group. You get my 10-week self-study course. It's on sale until tomorrow night for only $3.97. You have lifetime access to all the material in here, plus all the bonus material, the meditations in the Facebook group, and 8 weeks of live coaching where you can ask me anything. And I'm going to be doing a lot of timeline collapsing sessions to help you find that trauma origin timeline and collapse it. Okay, and there's more than one for many of you, so that's why I'm going to be doing it over 8 weeks. But it's also going to be you guys asking me anything. So let me read the comments. One thing that has really stumped me is the idea of jumping around different timelines and what that really means. I'm going to be doing a video talking about, because I'm all about timelines. And I do want to invite you, Heather, to watch the video that I uploaded on my Facebook feed the other day about multidimensionality and timeline shifts, because I do talk about that. But I'm going to be talking about specifically, oh, here it is. And I'll give you the link here right in, hold on. I'll give you the link right here in the comments. Okay, so Heather, this is for you. This is where I talk about multidimensionality. I break it down, multidimensionality and timeline shifts and what that means. So I'm going to be doing a video very soon, and I'll make sure to tag you on it. I need to actually teach a course about timelines because there's so much to know about it. So many people have questions about it. So many people are experiencing deja vu, and they just think, oh, isn't that interesting? No, there's a lot going on there, and a lot going on that can really help you. I want to talk about the difference between jumping timelines, bending timelines, merging timelines, and culminating timelines. And I'll probably do it as a 4-part course, and I'll do it really, really cheap because I want as many people to get this as possible. You're welcome. So do watch that video, Heather, because that's going to help you a lot. But this video is talking about what I'm talking about in this video. It's kind of beyond the scope of your question. So be looking for that, and do watch that video, Heather, because that will answer a big part of your question about shifting timelines and jumping around timelines, okay? So the reason why this is so important right now, this idea of culminating timelines, and if this is you, if you know that you've got so much coming in that you need to clear, you are in a wrap-up timeline. You're in a culminating timeline, which means many, many lifetimes of your experience here in 3D reality, are all coming together and culminating. So there's like the bigger lessons of that you have not marked complete yet are coming up in high contrast for you. So stop pretending you don't see it. Stop pretending you don't know it. There's a repeating pattern of things. You know what that is. You know what that is. We are all pretty savvy about our energy at this point. It's about how much we want to acknowledge that and accept where we are. That's a whole different story and the subject for a different live talk. But this culminating timeline, it's time for you to clear this stuff, because the next decade, here's what's going on. And again, at the risk of talking about time, linear time on a continuum, this is the way that we just break things down here in 3D, and I can help you to kind of grasp what's going on. But in the next decade, okay, the next 10 years, 12 years or so, what does that have in store for us? A lot of upsets, a lot of upheaval, suppressed info surfacing, a lot of upheaval, suppressed info surfacing, especially around religion, politics, governmental organizations, the medical establishment. A lot of secrecy, a lot of suppressed info coming up around these institutions specifically. Okay? It is so important for us to clear our stuff, to get rid of our shit. Because with this next decade and the major upsets, the upheaval of the medical systems, the religion, the politics, governmental organizations, especially secret organizations, a lot of suppressed info coming up around that. There's going to be a lot of outrage. There's going to be a lot of blame. There's going to be a lot of anger, okay, in the collective, okay? If we don't have our stuff like parsed out, figured out, released, cleansed, if we are not operating on our highest timeline, we run the risk of getting sucked into that downward spiral of energy, of vibration that's going to be created by all the outrage, all the blame, the resentment, and the anger that the collective will be feeling. It's going to be strong. This is part of collapsing collective timelines for all of humanity that has been living in a 3D way of being as a collective, because we have our individual timelines and we have collective timelines, okay? We are going to get swept up in that anger and that blame if we haven't cleared up our shit, because you won't be awake enough to see what's really going on if you don't clean up your own stuff. You're not going to be awake enough to see that all of this that's going on, especially the upset and the anger and the blame that's going to be happening, is going to be very favorable to some parties that would like to keep humanity suppressed, that would like to keep humanity in the dark, that would like to keep humanity in a place where we can be easily manipulated. And, a race of people that are not awakened is a race of people who are easily manipulated and dominated. That being said, we all still have free will choice, but what I'm trying to impress upon you is that in this next decade, if you don't clean up your own stuff, if you don't recognize that you're in a culminating timeline, lifetime, where you need to clean some stuff up now, it will be that much easier for you to get swept up and get swept down into that downward spiral, that downward vibrating energy that's going to keep the collective of humanity in the dark. And it doesn't mean we slow down the ascension process at all. It just means that the gap and the rift between those who are on that first wave of ascension, those who are leading that first wave of ascension, are going to be that much further ahead. And that gap, that chasm in between those who are deciding to stay in the dark, those who are, and they are deciding, believe me, people are deciding to not ascend, to not wake up, okay? That's on them. That's for them to do. And all we can do for those of us who are on that first wave of ascension and keep pushing this ascension wave forward, where we have our front to the wave instead of those people who have their back to the wave. They're not seeing these huge tsunamis that are coming and knocking them down again and again and again. However, those of us who are on the first wave of ascension, we're looking at the wave, we're seeing it coming, and we're like, okay, come on, we're bracing ourselves for it, we're getting ready, and we're moving with the flow and the trajectory and the momentum of that wave rather than being knocked down by it. This chasm, these two camps of people, is going to get bigger and bigger over the next decade. And it doesn't mean the earth isn't ascending. It doesn't mean that we aren't ascending. It doesn't mean that, that the first wave of those on the ascension process aren't going to be moving into a different dimensional reality. We are. But that gap, that chasm in between those who are deciding to not awaken is going to be that much bigger. So this is not a fear tactic at all. I'm just trying to give you a snapshot of what you can expect and why, if you are in a culminating timeline, it is so important for you to clean up your shit. Clean it up. Just wrap it up. All that stuff. Even though it feels like, this again, I can't do it again. I just spent like the last 3 years releasing. It's because you are wrapping up several multi-lifetimes in 3D that you've experienced here on this planet Earth. And remember, they're not past lifetimes. They're all existing simultaneously. That's why we do have the ability to change our past, really, because what we experience as past is not past at all. It's present. It's just a parallel reality. It's a parallel lifetime. So if we're making different choices, and that is the choice, something so simple as to clear the one thing that's bothering us. Maybe we have one person in our lives who's like a constant mirror for something that makes us angry. What is that? Figure it out and clear it up. Make peace with that. Forgive yourself. All of these things will change the lifetime, this culminating timeline that you're in now, and will periodically collapse those other timelines. And as you do that, more of the timelines that are aligned with where you're going will compress and merge, so that the energy of the vibration you're holding when you make better choices, make better decisions for yourself, engage in better behaviors with yourself and others, more of that vibration just builds and gets stronger, so that you're occupying a bigger bandwidth of energy in that vibration, which makes you, guess what, pretty impenetrable to that lower vibration. So keep making those good choices. Keep making those self-affirming decisions. And if you really need help with that, if you are interested in either doing these timeline compression and collapsing sessions with me personally, I have one-on-one sessions for that. Just reply here. But the other way to do it, which is a huge, amazing value, is to join the Become the Creatrix Facebook group, my signature self-study program. I'm reopening the group so that I can do live coaching sessions and timeline collapsing sessions with everyone who's in there. This is going to be a huge value. And those of you who are serious about hitting the ground running in 2020 and really greeting this next wave of ascension that's happening with the beginning, the birth of this new decade. It's already really happening now. The momentum is here. If you really want to hit the ground running with that and start, going full charge at what you want to create in your life without resistance, without this pullback, without this static to your broadcast of higher vibration, you need to get into this program, okay? I am really called to deliver this in the highest and best way for those of you who are really feeling like this is me. This is the way I'm feeling really called to be of service right now for the last quarter of this year. Hi everybody who's joining. I can't see all the comments. I have a storm coming in, so I'm not having the best reception. But thank you for being here. So this is, I know, a lot to think about. It's a lot to process. You may want to listen to this again. But this is the time for you. If what I am saying resonates with you, this is your time to wrap up all those other lifetimes that you are seeing echoes of in this lifetime. It's not a coincidence. It's not deja vu, okay? This is the time to clean it up, clean it up, clean it up. So I want to help you with that. I feel called to be of the highest service I can possibly be in doing this. And that's why I'm offering this amazing, amazing offer for you guys. So if you're called, get in here. The full details will be in the comments. And if you do have questions, if you're watching the replay and you have questions about anything I've talked about, go ahead and throw it in the comments and make sure you tag me so that I do see it. So I want to thank you guys for being here. Just allow this information to kind of just wash all over you. I think there was one. Oh, Heather had a comment. Past life and ancestral healing has been coming up lately. I have done some healing on it, but more to do. So that makes sense why it's coming up so heavy. Yes, absolutely. And Heather, if you really do need help with this and you want to collapse those past timelines where this trauma keeps coming up, that's exactly what I'm offering in the Facebook group for my self-study program. It's going to be 8 weeks of live coaching and timeline collapsing in addition to the course material. It's a huge value. So love and peace. Thanks for watching.